The Legends of King Arthur. Tristan and Isolde. Illustrated by Mike Phillips. Chapter 1. Tristan de Lyonesse and his opponent charged towards each other, lances lowered and ready to strike. Tristan braced for impact, but was still rocked backwards as the other lance crashed against his shield. His own glanced off his opponent's armored shoulder. Splinters of wood flew and spectators cheered. As Tristan turned his horse, he was pleased to see, through the slit of his visor, that his lance was still intact. He looked towards the other end of the arena. His opponent was adjusting to the weight of a new lance as he exchanged a few words with Kay. Wasting no time, Tristan spurred his horse. Looking up, his opponent sprang into action, slapping his visor back down with his shield arm and surging to meet Tristan head-on. Again they clashed, only this time Tristan's lance smashed into the red and white of Lancelot du Lac's shield, unseating him. Reining his horse, Tristan turned hard. He was ready to charge again, but seeing Lancelot still sprawled on the ground, he knew that he had won. Tristan raised his lance in triumph, and reveled in the excited cheers as he guided his horse around the arena in a lap of victory. Returning to his end of the arena, he gave Sir Percival his lance and shield, before dismounting and handing the reins to a stable boy. He strode over to Lancelot. "A good match," he declared, offering his hand. Lancelot took it. "A good blow." He removed his helmet and shook his head, looking slightly dazed. At the sight of the two best justers in Camelot shaking hands, the crowd cheered all the more joyfully. The pair waved in return, before bowing to the king and queen. Arthur stood, raising his arms to silence the crowd. "I declare Tristan de Lyonesse the victor." The knights of the Round Table gathered in the arena to congratulate both men on a good joust. When the revelry had died down, Arthur held his hand out for Guinevere and led her back to the castle. The knights followed. "He'll let you have this victory," Lancelot smiled at Tristan. "But next time, it will be you lying in the dirt whilst I take the victory lap." Before Tristan had arrived in Camelot a few years ago, no one could beat Lancelot in a joust. In the years since, it had become a competition between the two to see who could unseat the other first. Tristan may have won this bout, but Lancelot had won more overall, a fact which the older knight never let Tristan forget. As a boy, Tristan had learned how to joust and hunt in his uncle King Mark of Cornwall's court at Tintagel, and had quickly become the best at both. In time, however, Tristan had grown bored of life in Cornwall. Hearing tales of King Arthur and his knights, he had traveled to Camelot and found his place at the Round Table. "Sir Tristan." Tristan turned at the sound of his name to find a young squire, King Arthur's nephew, making his way towards him. "Yes, Mordred?" Mordred held out a scroll. "This came for you." Tristan recognized his uncle's seal, a shield displaying 3 lion heads. Breaking the seal, he unrolled the parchment and began to read. Tristan entered Arthur's receiving room and made his way to the king. Arthur looked up from his conversation with Merlin at his approach. "Tristan?" Arthur asked. "Is something wrong?" Tristan came to a stop, bowing. "Your Majesty, I need to speak with you urgently." "Of course. Tell me what bothers you." "I have received a message from my uncle." Arthur looked concerned. "Is Mark unwell?" "He calls me back to Tintagel, Your Majesty," Tristan explained. "The giant Morholt, brother-in-law to King Gorlam of Ireland, has defeated my uncle's forces. As a tribute, he now demands that 30 men of noble birth be sent to him to become servants of Gorlam's court. I must return to Cornwall to help." "Of course," Arthur agreed. "I shall accompany." "No." Tristan shook his head. "Forgive me, my king, but I must return alone. Otherwise Morholt may see it as an act of war." Arthur sighed. "You are right, of course. But you must promise me that you will call on me if needed." Tristan bowed. "Of course, Your Majesty." Reaching out, Arthur placed a hand on his shoulder. "And you must return to Camelot when this is over?" "You have my word," Tristan agreed. Chapter 2. Tristan rode hard to Tintagel, only stopping when darkness fell. His short nights were spent worrying about what was happening to his uncle, the man he had come to look upon as a father. By the light of the campfire, he read and reread Mark's words, hoping that he would arrive before his uncle was persuaded by his advisors to give in to Morholt's demands. Finally arriving at Tintagel, Tristan found Morholt's men camped outside. Slowing his horse, Tristan made his way towards the gatehouse, watching each man carefully as he passed, alert for any sign of attack. Tristan reined his horse to a stop as a giant stepped into his path. Although wearing armor, the giant had no helmet and a ragged scar ran down his left cheek. "Your name?" the giant demanded in an Irish accent. Tristan sat straighter in his saddle. "Tristan de Lyonesse, nephew of King Mark of Cornwall." "You must be Morholt," the giant grinned, revealing several missing teeth. "Duke Morholt," he spat on the ground as he stepped aside. "Tell your uncle he has until sundown to give me what I came for, or send out a man brave enough to fight me." Tristan held Morholt's gaze for a moment before snapping his reins and continuing on. "But, uncle, we cannot give in." Tristan insisted. Mark sighed. "We just don't see any other way, Tristan." "So you would all rather have your sons sent to live as servants in Ireland than stand up to Morholt?" Tristan asked in disbelief, looking around at Mark and his advisors. "Have you seen him?" one of his uncle's advisors squeaked. "Then I will challenge him," Tristan declared, storming from the room. Mark hurried after him. "Are you sure about this, Tristan? Your bravery is well known, but Morholt is a monster." "I am not afraid, uncle." They were soon at the gatehouse, where Morholt was waiting. "Has the cowardly king finally made a decision?" he mocked. "I will fight you," Tristan said, loudly enough for all to hear. It was decided that the duel would take place on a small island not far off the coast of Cornwall. 2 boats were made ready, one for Tristan, the other for Morholt. The following day, they both rowed out to the island. "Only one of us will leave here," Morholt declared, pushing his boat back out to sea, so that only Tristan's remained on the beach. "This will only end when one of us is dead." "As you wish," Tristan agreed as he raised his shield. The 2 men circled, sizing each other up. Tristan made the first move, his sword flashing in the sun, but Morholt's spear easily pushed it aside. Spinning the butt of his spear around, Morholt tried to sweep Tristan's legs out from under him. Tristan dodged and countered with a blow that caught Morholt's arm, drawing blood. Roaring with rage, Morholt thrust his spear forward, piercing Tristan's thigh. Tristan fell to the ground, crying out as Morholt pulled his spear from the wound. Blood soaked his trousers, but Tristan climbed clumsily to his feet, gritting his teeth against the pain shooting through his leg. Morholt laughed. "I admire you, Tristan de Lyonesse, but your bravery is no good to you now. My spear point is poisoned?" The giant bent his head to gloat. "You are dead already, although it will not come quickly." "Coward!" Tristan roared. His pain exploded into rage as he launched himself at Morholt, driving his sword through his skull. Morholt's eyes flew wide with shock, and stayed that way as he dropped lifelessly to the ground. Tristan pulled his sword from the giant's head. Turning, he limped towards his boat and threw his sword and shield into it. It took almost all his remaining strength to push the boat out to sea and heave himself aboard. Picking up the oars, he used the rest to row away from the shore, hoping that he could make it